Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Signal with Snorlax, a weekly show where we try to do exactly what the title says, as I always say, and that is to try and find some signal. Today, I wanted to talk to you about Bitcoin dominance. Is the Bitcoin dominance top in? What does that mean for ETH? What does that mean for every one of these altcoins that we're trading? Will there ever be an alt season again? Are the highs in? We're going to discuss it on today's show. But I could see the possibility for some chop in markets over the course of the rest of the summer. And I feel like we've kind of gotten a bit of a mixed bag to that degree since last week. So we're going to try to be a little bit better this time around, right? I mean, Bitcoin is I would say Bitcoin's kind of respecting the behavior I expected, which is very much, choppy, limited upside because it's going to trade very in line with what equity markets are doing. And that's really how equities have been trading as well, right? It's been kind of not even as much floating higher as it has been just kind of chopping sideways. So again, it makes sense that we're seeing Bitcoin kind of trade more or less the same way. But the real, wrench in what I told you guys yesterday was ETH, or yesterday, last week was ETH. I was kind of looking for ETH to come into 41, 4,200 and then start to go sideways, replicate potentially that price action that we saw from Bitcoin in 2020 after COVID and pre 2021, before much higher pricing. And ETH is just kind of going for it. So it's really kind of the biggest wild card in the entire market for how I'm viewing it right now. But yeah, I mean, we're kind of in this very interesting duality now between Bitcoin and ETH, where they are completely diverging. Is that something that we would expect to see late cycle, or is that just kind of, I think, a natural catch-up trade? Because, let's face it, right? Bitcoin is currently trading about 100% above its previous cycle high. ETH still has not yet made all-time highs. So we do have this technical repricing that is occurring right now. We don't know if it's all going to get repriced right now or if it's kind of down the line. Maybe this is just kind of an ignition move. But it's very difficult to look at that chart and be bearish. You can expect a pullback potentially, but being outright bearish on this chart is difficult, I think. And that kind of sets the tone for ETH BTC, for Bitcoin dominance. I'm sorry if you guys hear my mom's cat in the background. Funny story. This is actually my second take on the video. This is because she made herself known in my first attempt to record this. So I basically had to start over. Hopefully I don't have to do that again. But I'm cat sitting like a good son. And ETH BTC really is the fundamental linchpin for Bitcoin dominance, because what does this metric actually measure? For a long time, it was just Bitcoin's relationship with ETH, right? And you can see it obviously come down quite aggressively in 2018. It was a very different market, very different conditions back then. We've added thousands of alts, hundreds, thousands of alts over the last few years here. So, it's kind of different and more nuanced in how you have to view it. ETH is still going to be the primary driver of what brings Bitcoin dominance down now. But now when we think about Bitcoin dominance, a lot of times we think more about like that dispersion throughout altcoins. And when is it going to impact them more meaningfully? Meme coins, most of them, their market cap is not big enough to meaningfully bring this chart down. So we're mostly talking about things like ETH, things like these. I endearingly refer to them as VC scams. Those are going to be the assets that meaningfully move Bitcoin dominance lower. But at the same time, when Bitcoin dominance is moving lower, meme coins are going to be getting, their most run as well. So, right now, I think we are seeing that duality, not just reflected through Bitcoin and ETH's relationship, but also between ETH and things like Solana and others, where you have ETH just chatting higher. But at the same time, we're not quite seeing the same level of dispersion that you would kind of expect to see as ETH is about to break into price discovery. ETH dominance is basically straight up in a straight line here over the last few weeks. So, when are these other altcoins going to move? And truthfully, I think we can kind of view this timing looking at ETH looking at ETH Bitcoin and probably at Sol Bitcoin, ETH Bitcoin to me looks extremely bottomed, right? I mean, you can probably get a pullback eventually. I don't know when or where that pullback will come from, because quite frankly, this has been a perpetual bleed for years. So it would not surprise me at all if this kept squeezing higher. After all, I do think that Bitcoin dominance making a move down into 54, 52% here over the next few months is kind of my expectation. So I guess I can come out and say it. I do think that the Bitcoin dominance top is in for no reason more meaningful than the fact that I think the ETH Bitcoin macro low is in. Now, that does not mean that Bitcoin dominance can't potentially make another stab up here. It was something I was kind of prospecting maybe like a week or two ago. Maybe we still do get it. It's not something that I think has to happen, but I do believe in general we're kind of seeing this supply, and I would say this run up from Bitcoin dominance in 2021 cap price both technically and contextually, because this immediately preceded a much larger alt season for crypto. So I do think Bitcoin dominance is headed lower. I think that's what ETH Bitcoin is communicating. But at the same time, I think what these Bitcoin pairs are also communicating, I don't really think the Sol Bitcoin low is in. I know that is probably an unpopular take because everybody loves Sol this cycle. Everybody loves the meme coins, the on-chain activity. But I think on-chain activity is going to shift more over to ETH. I've talked about this concept a lot. I won't talk about it again today, but I do think that is coming. As Sol kind of falls out of favor, ETH picks up favor. And then I think Sol BTC, if this is a reflection of kind of the rest of the market and also Sol ETH, I think this is kind of a fair reflection of the rest of the market that doesn't include ETH, right? I mean, this kind of looks like the others ETH chart, which has been basically capitulating here over the last few weeks. I mean, I just think this is kind of cyclical in nature, because in the same way that we saw ETH Bitcoin just bleed before a vicious reversal, we're kind of seeing the same thing from these super high beta alts. So there's an order of operations, and as much as everybody likes to pretend we don't respect it, we do. And usually the fact that it has taken so long to play out, to me, is only kind of further validating the idea of, are we looking at a potentially longer cycle than usual for crypto and digital assets? But yeah, I mean, I think Sol BTC probably has lower to go. Does that mean that these assets will keep bleeding against ETH for maybe an undetermined amount of time? It definitely could mean that, right? At the very least, Sol performance has not bottomed against Bitcoin or ETH to me. Although, I guess if you are explicitly trading fractals, I'm sure you could post that Sol Bitcoin right now looks a little bit like ETH Bitcoin here. I personally would not be making that comparison, but I have seen people make it. And I have to acknowledge that it's a possibility. But yeah, I mean, I think it's, again, this order of operations. We've seen Bitcoin run. Now we're seeing ETH run. And after we can kind of smash some of these Bitcoin and ETH charts a bit more, we're going to see these higher beta assets run. But I think as Ethereum is showing us, just because it hasn't happened doesn't mean that it won't. It took a really long time for ETH to begin finally outperforming. And again, it's still not even above last cycle's all-time high. I think there's still quite a bit of leeway for this asset to potentially run here over the next few months and maybe even over the next few years. But yeah, I mean, these are kind of the things that I'm looking at for Bitcoin dominance. And on a higher time frame, it definitely looks to me like it's topped, which means maybe some alts, right, aren't done bleeding against ETH or Bitcoin, but we are nearing levels where they should start to begin to find their footing, not just against Bitcoin and ETH, but also I think in USD pricing, which is the most important, right? I mean, that's ultimately why we're here, is because most of you are denominating assets in dollars rather than, or euros, maybe, who knows, rather than in Bitcoin or ETH. I would say some additional things that kind of give me some confluence that this low is in. For starters, I feel like I've seen this market structure play out before, kind of similar to here, right? I mean, this massive pump, Echo Bubble, Perpetual Bleed, probably putting in some semblance of this leg right here. If it's the equivalent. I do think this is kind of giving you a hint as far as what price action to expect from Bitcoin dominance over the next few years. For one, that might be a really unpopular opinion, right? Because I mean, Bitcoin maxis get very upset about Bitcoin dominance going down, or the idea of it potentially going down that much, because if you're paying attention, that would be a Bitcoin dominance reading effectively over the next few years, right? I don't think this is a weekly or a daily type of thing to expect, but a high time frame thematic that we're discussing here. I mean, we're basically saying this is going to rotate all the way back down into here, down into the low 30s. And before you call me an altcoin moon boy, you know, if you've been following me on X, if you've been following me through Discord, whatever it might be, I have been a very, very firm Bitcoin dominance bull the entire cycle. I've been bull posting it. I even thought it would potentially go higher than 64, 65%. But I felt like a few weeks ago, based on what we were seeing from ETH BTC, from ETH USD, and really just kind of the distribution that we were seeing around this swing high, I called top on Bitcoin dominance. I think it was like right here or right here. And it looks to me pretty definitively like this is going to keep coming down. So, you know, there's going to be a lot of noise with USD pricing in between. But for me, I think it's pretty clear that we're going to see Bitcoin dominance continue to move down here over the next probably 12 to 18 months. I won't call it an eternal alt season, but, you know, I definitely think there are some deeper reasonings we can potentially dissect if we wanted to. I won't go into them. Fundamentally, for why altcoins catching a bid from here makes increasingly more sense than Bitcoin on a relative basis, of course, right? The last point I want to bring up is ironically is Celestia. Like, why would I be talking about Celestia on a video about Bitcoin dominance, about where I almost exclusively talked about Bitcoin, ETH, and Sol, specifically ETH? Why do I care about Celestia? And it's because I kind of think, I kind of feel like, for one, this asset is representative of not just VC coins, but sentiment around them. Huge pump, obviously. And it's just been down only through meme coin euphoria and market-wide chop and bleed for altcoins. But I kind of feel like this asset is bottoming. I don't know if it's officially bottomed. I do kind of lean that it has. This is a really dangerous chart for me, though, to be calling bottom on. Let me just say that much. I'm not a buyer of this asset, maybe not at any price. But I do feel like now that we're kind of trading below the bottom of the listing wick, we might start to see a bottom get carved out around these prices. Again, this is a pretty rough sketch of what it could look like. It'll probably take more time than that. But if this is indicative of VC altcoins potentially finding their low, I think that is relevant when we're talking about Bitcoin dominance, especially, you know, and when you can kind of point to some other VC alts that have shown some strength here over the last few weeks, like a Say, even some of these VC DeFi alts like a Pendle, which, I mean, completely surprised me. I won't even lie. I'm very surprised to see Pendle trading where it's at right now. But yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of symbolic of where VC where VC alts, VC assets could potentially be within their market cycles. And given that information, given the ETH Bitcoin move, given our view on Bitcoin dominance, and of course ETH USD, I think to a lesser extent, but really I think these pair charts are telling the story that the Bitcoin dominance top is in. Could there be more shenanigans before we see it come down more? Sure. Could there be more ETH dominance coming into the market rather than a bid on higher beta alts first? Sure. And I would say that might be more likely than not. But to me, it looks pretty clean that the Bitcoin dominance top is in. We'll see what that means for USD prices, what that means for altcoins in the meantime. I hope I gave you guys potentially some signal here on not just where ETH is cyclically, but potentially some of these higher beta altcoins as well, which you can probably represent with some of these VC alts. Obviously, Doge is another one for meme coins as a sector, and then Solana. as well. But yeah, that's it for me, guys. I hope that you enjoyed the episode today. We'll see if it ages better than the one from last week. At least for it aged well for Bitcoin. I wouldn't say it aged as well for ETH, but this is a very volatile market. Things change all the time. I'll see you guys next week for another episode. But until then, thanks again as always, and yeah, stay safe in these markets, guys.